question that motivated me when I started grad school was, how could we make a difference in the world through organizations? How could organizations have a positive social impact on our world? Which brought me to the tension between social missions, finance and profit, and essentially the research on corporate social responsibility. And so much of that work was framed about the dilemmas, the trade-offs, the ways in which social missions and profits conflicted with one another. And it was this question, in my mind, I had this idea that these actually don't always conflict with one another, that all organizations have an inherent tension between their impact on the broader world and their ability to sustain themselves within their organization. And it was this insight, or this idea, that brought me to the literature on paradox, which was essentially a literature to help me understand that relationship. And so in many ways, I think of paradox as a literature that helps us shift a question from understanding under what conditions, or what is the trade-off between two elements, our social mission and impact externally and our financial profits and impact internally, to how do we do both simultaneously? How do we engage the inherent relationship between the two of these? And so in many ways, what I think that the first pass of paradox contribution to organizational theory is just shifting the question. How do we move from A or B to how do we do A and B simultaneously? But perhaps that's only paradox 1.0. Because if we really, as we dig into insights about paradox, what we realize is that what we do in that question is take competing demands, social and financial, explore, exploit, global, local, change, stability, and we assume that each of these alternative poles are static, that they remain unchanged, that they remain static in relationship to one another. In essence, we take paradoxical relationships and we flatten them like a butterfly between two panes of glass. I think that if we are to renew, as we challenge paradox research going forward, the challenge is to say, how do we recognize and understand that the relationship between alternative options actually changes those options, makes them dynamic, keeps them, each of these options, shifting and changing along the way, that the financial demands and what is our challenges inside the organization inform and change how we understand our social mission and what is outside the organization, and therefore change the inside of the organization. And so if I were to think about the assumptions going forward and our research on paradox going forward, it's to challenge us to move from that flattened state of understanding paradox as a static thing to understanding paradoxical relationships that are in a more dynamic flux in which these alternative poles are shifting and informing one another. And I look forward to more research that challenges or explores those assumptions.